Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I'll never forget the moment the text came through. It was a Tuesday evening. Quiet, uneventful. I had just pulled into the garage after a brutal day at work. One of those long meetings, fake smiles, overloaded deadlines kind of days. I was looking forward to nothing more than kicking off my shoes, heating up leftovers, and maybe watching an episode of anything that didn't involve people trying to squeeze blood from each other over spreadsheets. I remember glancing at my phone out of habit before turning off the ignition. Just one message. No emojis. No punctuation. Nothing cute or dramatic. I need a break from you. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds, my thumb hovering like I was going to reply. But I didn't. Not yet. At first, I thought it was a joke. Some kind of weird, late April Fool's prank. Then I reread it and realized it wasn't a joke, but it also wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration. Cold. Premeditated. Like she'd been rehearsing it all day and finally hit send without an ounce of hesitation. I walked into the house, set my keys on the counter, and sat in silence. The living room was just like I'd left it that morning, dim, still, almost sterile. No music. No signs she'd even been home. Just that awful text sitting on my screen, glowing like a threat. We'd been married 8 years. And yes, like most couples, we'd hit a few rough patches. Work stress, differences in how we wanted to spend weekends, the usual things that slowly erode communication if you're not careful. But we weren't explosive. We weren't violent. We still slept in the same bed. She still laughed at my jokes. Or at least pretended to. I thought we were just coasting through one of those mid-marriage slumps where you both get tired and forget how to try. I thought we were still salvageable. Apparently, I was wrong. I didn't respond to her. Not yet. Not with anything emotional. I just typed one word. Understood. That was it. No questions. No pleas. I didn't give her the drama she might have expected. But inside, I was unraveling. It wasn't heartbreak. Not exactly. It was the realization that I'd been holding onto something dead. A connection that only I'd been tending. You can't fix a bridge when the other side is already gone. I sat on the couch that night, my plate untouched on the coffee table, staring at the TV screen without absorbing a single thing. My thoughts were loud, and all of them were echoing the same question. Why now? Why this way? The timing felt surgical. Calculated. We had just celebrated her birthday 2 weeks ago. I bought her a new necklace. She smiled when she opened the box, kissed my cheek, even curled up next to me that night like everything was fine. It wasn't passion, but it wasn't war either. So what changed? Or worse, what had already changed that I hadn't seen? I thought back to the last few months. The subtle shifts. She'd started going out more. At first it was catching up with friends, then it became work events, then just silence, no explanations, no details. Just late returns and a tired sigh as she climbed into bed and turned away from me. She'd stopped cooking. Not that I ever expected it. It wasn't about the food, it was the care behind it. The last time we had dinner together at the table, she was scrolling through her phone halfway through the meal. When I asked her about her day, she gave me that distracted nod. The one people give when they want you to finish your sentence so they can change the subject. I wasn't oblivious. I just didn't want to believe it. And now here it was, no argument, no warning. Just a sentence that told me, point blank, she wanted out. And not just out of a conversation. Out of me. The next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and scrolled through our shared bank account. I wasn't looking for evidence. I didn't want to play detective, but part of me had to know. I needed something to tell me this wasn't just emotional exhaustion. I wanted proof it was something deeper. I didn't find it. Not yet. Just a few Uber charges, some unfamiliar restaurants, nothing damning. But my gut was already speaking louder than logic. And still, I didn't reach out to her. She said she needed space. So I gave it to her. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that I wasn't just going to sit and wait for her to come back. She wanted a break? She was about to get a clean break. Permanent. Precise. Unforgiving. She just didn't know it yet. She was gone for 4 days. No explanations. No calls. Not even a, "How are you?" or "Have you eaten?" Just radio silence. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't ask who she was with. Because I already knew that the moment I asked, I'd be surrendering. I'd be saying, "You still have control. You still owe me an answer." And I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. So I did something else. I started watching. We shared a lot of tech in the house, smart thermostats, shared calendars, Amazon account, even a backup location sharing app we installed for emergencies during a trip years ago and then both forgot about. Or at least, she thought I did. Turns out, she never turned it off. Most people forget about the stuff that becomes routine. But I remembered. The morning after her break text, I opened the app. It showed her checking into a hotel across town. Not one of those convenient, budget places. This was the kind with valet parking, champagne in the lobby, and rooms designed for, well, not sleeping alone. I stared at the screen for a while. Not because I didn't believe it, but because a small, pathetic part of me still hoped she had some excuse. Maybe a work conference. Maybe she was just angry and needed peace. But peace doesn't cost $400 a night and includes spa reservations under someone else's name. She hadn't booked it with our card. She used hers clever, but she'd slipped up. She used our joint Uber account to get there. I saw the exact time she was dropped off. Then, 2 hours later, another Uber, different direction. Different name. A man. David K. I didn't know a David, but she did. He was listed in her contacts months ago when I once saw his name flash on her phone as she walked past me. I remember asking, "Who's David?" She waved it off with a chuckle. Coworker. Project manager on a boring team. Older guy. Nothing interesting. Apparently, she had found him interesting enough now. I wasn't surprised. I was calm, disturbingly calm. The kind of calm that happens when you've moved past heartbreak and into analysis. That's where I lived now. And I kept digging. Over the next 2 days, I pulled every bank statement we had. I logged into her iCloud from a laptop she'd forgotten still had access. I didn't need her messages. I could already tell by the recurring names in her digital trail, boutique wine stores she'd never visited before, spa appointments booked during her claimed team offsites, and payments to rideshare drivers at hours that made no sense. But none of that was the worst part. The worst part was that someone I trusted, someone in her circle, was helping her. Her best friend, Marissa. Marissa had always been a little too loud in defending my wife. When we argued, she'd call within minutes like she had a sixth sense. Back then, I thought it was just the kind of support women gave each other. Now, I saw it differently. The day after I tracked the hotel visit, I accidentally called Marissa while she was on speaker in her car. I let it ring 3 times, then hung up. A minute later, she called me back. I didn't answer. I just let it go to voicemail. Her message? Hey. Just saw your call. Everything okay? Did something happen with Claire? The way she said it. That hesitation. That fear. That slip. She didn't say, "What's going on?" or "Why are you calling?" She went straight to Claire. She was on edge, and she had every reason to be. That night, I checked our doorbell camera history. For days earlier, the same evening Claire told me she'd needed a break, Marissa had pulled up in her car and picked her up. Luggage already packed. They hugged before getting in, like two friends about to pull off a plan they'd rehearsed 100 times. And I wondered how long they had been planning it. Was it just this week? This month? Or had this break been in motion for longer than I ever realized? That's when the pieces began to click. Marissa wasn't just helping her lie. She was part of it. I didn't sleep much that night. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the silence in the house. No footsteps upstairs. No sounds of her brushing her teeth. No warmth under the covers beside me. But I wasn't sad. I was calculating. By morning, I'd made a list. Legal consultation. Financial assets. Password updates. Digital backups. Surveillance options. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to make it airtight first. I wanted every move she made mapped out. I wanted her to think I was still stunned, still waiting for her to come back, still holding on. Because while she was on her break, I was preparing for our breakup. And when it hit her, it would hit all at once. She thought she knew me. She didn't even know what I was capable of. She came back on a Sunday morning, just before noon. I heard the car before I saw it. Her tires crunching over the gravel like nothing had happened, like she hadn't vanished for half a week and left behind only a text message and a dead silence. I stayed on the porch, pretending to scroll through my phone, a mug of lukewarm coffee in my hand. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses and that leather jacket she always claimed made her feel untouchable. She didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first tell. She had rehearsed this return in her head, probably dozens of times. I'd bet good money she expected me to either be gone in rage or sitting inside sulking like a wounded animal. Instead, I smiled. Hey, I said casually, like she'd just run to the store and not fled our life for 4 nights. She flinched. It was quick, but I caught it. Then she forced a smile of her own. "Hey," she echoed. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No confrontation. Just that heavy, awkward "hey" hanging between us like a towel that still smelled like someone else's cologne. "I picked up groceries," I said. "Figured we'd need stuff for the week." Again, that pause. That tiny flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She had come back expecting a conversation, a fight, maybe even a breakdown. She wasn't prepared for calm. It messed with her. And I knew it. From that moment on, I treated her return like nothing unusual had happened. I asked her if she wanted tea before bed. I kissed her cheek in the mornings. I even suggested we plan something low-key for the weekend, just to reconnect. Every move I made was calculated to disarm her, to lull her into believing that I was still under her spell, that her absence hadn't changed anything. But everything had changed. What she didn't know was that during her little getaway, I had already locked down access to our joint savings, froze every shared card, redirected every digital subscription, billing alert, and legal document to my private email. I wasn't acting like a man betrayed. I was acting like a man building his exit. It was Wednesday night when I found the final proof I needed. She had gone to bed early, said she had a headache. I waited 15 minutes, then walked into her home office, pretending to need a charger. Her laptop was open and unlocked. Almost too easy. I didn't go looking through her files. I didn't need to. The browser was already open to an email chain. At the top, David. The same name from the Uber tag. They weren't just sleeping together. They had a plan. They were looking at apartments. She had written, "I'm working on making things smooth. Once it's quiet, we can make the shift. I'll handle the split on my end. He's emotionally slow anyway. He won't see it coming." She was right about one thing. She had made it quiet. But what she didn't realize was that I was already handling my own version of the split. The next day, I took a sick day from work and went to see a lawyer. Simple, clean, emotionless. Just facts. He asked me if I wanted to pursue fault-based divorce. I said no. I didn't need the courts to punish her. I could do that myself. I wanted speed, finality, control. I asked about pre-disclosure asset division. I learned exactly what I could legally freeze, restructure, reallocate before filing. She'd get her share, sure. But the timing would be mine. That night, I made dinner, salmon with lemon garlic risotto, her favorite. She walked into the kitchen and blinked, stunned. "You cooked." I laughed. I guess I missed us. I watched her force a soft smile and sip her wine too quickly. She was trying to believe it. Desperately. I let her. She didn't know that while I was pouring that wine, I had already moved $18,000 into a private account under my name only. She didn't know I had revoked her access to the house title by triggering a partial refinance. She didn't know that I'd pulled the data from our smart cameras and had copies of the night she left, of the car she got into, and the exact time she returned. Every minute accounted for. She also didn't know I had added Marissa's name to the list of people not allowed at our property quietly, without drama, just a note in the home monitoring app, flagged for legal record keeping. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was a correction. A reset. She came back thinking she'd be greeted by the same man who once begged for her attention. Instead, she came back to a stranger who still knew how to smile, and was quietly building the end she'd never see coming. She didn't suspect a thing. By the following week, she was back to posting curated pictures of date nights and aesthetic breakfasts like we were some happily functioning couple. Her tone softened. She laughed a little louder at my jokes. She even started brushing her hand against mine when we passed in the kitchen. Not affection. Not guilt. Just habit. She thought the game had reset. But it hadn't. I was just waiting for the right moment to end it. I needed one last push. Not for legal reasons, those were already underway, but for me. I wanted her to see it happen. Not just feel the aftermath, but actually witness the collapse. So I planned a dinner. Thursday. Her favorite wine, her favorite music, in 2 printed envelopes at the table before she even sat down. She came in wearing that red silk top, the one she always reached for when she wanted something. Her makeup was careful, deliberate. I poured her a glass, smiled across the table, and waited until she took her first sip before sliding the envelopes toward her. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Something you should read." She opened the first one. It was a copy of the finalized divorce filing, stamped and ready, submitted that morning. Everything spelled out in clean, clinical language. There was no mention of David. There didn't need to be. In a no-fault state, Betrayal doesn't need to be named for it to cost you. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. And then she looked up at me. Are you serious? I just sipped my wine. Then I nodded at the second envelope. She opened it slower this time, probably thinking it would be worse. It was. Inside were printouts, hotel invoices, timestamps, GPS logs, screenshots of her texts to Marissa, the email thread with David, the apartment listing they'd been discussing. This is illegal, she snapped, voice cracking. No, I said calmly. Everything in there was pulled from devices and accounts we both agreed to share years ago. You just forgot. She went pale. I never cheated, she hissed. We were on a break. No, I said, leaning back in my chair. You took a break. I just used the time wisely. She stood up fast, knocking over her chair. Her wine glass shook. You had no right to go through my stuff. I had no right to what? I interrupted, still steady. Know what my wife was doing while she was lying to me? Planning an escape with someone else while living in a house I paid for? While playing pretend in public? That shut her up. She stared at me, and for a second, just a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Not because I was yelling. I wasn't. Not because I'd lost control. I hadn't. But because she finally realized I'd never lost it to begin with. She reached for the papers again, maybe hoping she'd misread something. That there was a loophole. But there wasn't. I'd been deliberate. Every account was closed. Every asset transferred. Every liability reassigned. Her name was cleanly extracted from the structure of my life like a tumor from a scan. And she hadn't even felt the surgery. Why? She finally whispered. I smiled then. Not out of cruelty, but out of closure. Because you said you needed a break, I replied. And I figured, why stop there? She started crying. Silent at first, then bitter and fast. She called me cruel. Cold. Said I was heartless. Maybe I was. But the truth was, I had simply stopped lying to myself. I had stopped waiting for her to become someone she no longer was. I had stopped giving chances to a person who saw loyalty as weakness. I left the table without saying another word. Walked upstairs, packed the bag I had hidden in the back of the closet a week ago, and left her sitting there. By the time I returned the next day with movers and a locksmith, she was gone. She left a note. It was short. You win. But that wasn't true. There were no winners here. Just someone who refused to lose anymore. It's been 6 months since I left the table. 6 months since I walked out without raising my voice, without begging for closure, without giving her another chance to rewrite the narrative. She thought she was holding the pen, but I had already taken the last page and burned it. We finalized the divorce 3 weeks ago. Clean split. Assets divided exactly as outlined. No fighting. No letters from lawyers, no drawn-out mediation. She didn't contest a thing. Didn't show up in court. Just signed the papers and disappeared into whatever world she'd built with her stronger man. David. Turns out he didn't last either. Mutual friends told me she moved in with him after I filed, thinking he'd be the soft landing. But the novelty wore off. It always does when it's built on secrecy and deception. He ghosted her after 2 months. Maybe he figured out who she really was. Or maybe he just wasn't interested in being her next victim. It doesn't matter. She tried to contact me once after the split. One long email filled with self-reflection, pseudo-apologies, and a paragraph near the end that stuck with me. I never thought you'd let me go that easily. I thought you'd fight for us. But she was wrong again. Letting go wasn't easy. It was just necessary. I didn't reply. I archived the message, not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to remind myself how a manipulator speaks when they run out of leverage. My house is quieter now. There's no perfume on the pillow, no extra toothbrush beside the sink. No mysterious wine charges, no staged smiles on social media. Just the space I've reclaimed, physically and mentally. I bought new furniture. Sold the bedroom set. Replaced the bed entirely. Repainted the walls she always complained were too cold. Now they're navy. Solid. Still, I started running again. Sleeping better. Eating on my own schedule. I even got a dog, something she always said she was allergic to, though I suspect now that it was just her way of making sure I didn't have anything else to love. He's a rescue. Labrador mix. I named him Echo. Because for a long time, that's all my marriage had been. My voice bouncing back at me, unanswered. People ask me sometimes if I miss her. If I miss the idea of her. And the honest answer? I miss who I thought she was. I miss who I became when I believed in us. The version of myself that still saw potential in the broken pieces. That man tried. That man believed in redemption, in effort, in building something with the person he loved. But love without truth is just emotional labor. And eventually, you wake up one morning and realize that you've been pouring water into a glass with no bottom. She said she needed a break. I gave her one. Permanent. Unapologetic. Complete. Not out of revenge. Out of self-respect. She'll never know the exact moment she lost me. That's the part that haunts people like her. Not the consequences, but the silence. Not the fight, but the fact that there wasn't one. Because when someone like her expects a reaction and you give them peace instead, that's when they realize they weren't just replaceable. They were irrelevant.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.